Hi, I'm Raylan. I guess you could say I'm your typical 24-year-old, except for the nightmares. They always start the same: thick smoke, burning lungs, and my mother's face as she closes the door, my brother in her arms. Not me. Earth to Ray! Your coffee's getting cold, said Tessa, sliding into the booth across from me. My best friend since college had the uncanny ability to sense when I was slipping into those memories. Sorry, zoned out again, I said, wrapping my hands around the mug. Thanks for meeting me here. I needed to get out of the apartment. Tessa tucked her dark curls behind her ear. You've been cooped up for days. What's going on? I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. This came yesterday, from Marcus. Her eyes widened as she read the text from my brother. Mom's moving back? To this city? After 12 years? Apparently she got some job at the university hospital, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Have you talked to Marcus about how you feel? I sighed. He thinks it's time to move forward as a family. Says she's changed. And what do you think? Tessa asked, eyebrow raised. I think he was 7 when it happened and doesn't remember what she did. The bell above the cafe door jingled. Marcus walked in, his lanky frame towering over most of the patrons. At 19, he looked so much like our father it sometimes hurt to look at him. Hey, Ray. Tessa? He nodded, sliding in beside me. Did you get my text? Oh, I got it, I said, stirring my coffee unnecessarily. Along with your 6 voicemails. Look, I know you're upset. Upset? I laughed, the sound hollow. Marcus, she left me in a burning house. Tessa's eyes darted between us. Maybe I should give you two some space. No, stay, I insisted. Marcus seems to have forgotten what happened. Maybe you need to hear it again, too. I haven't forgotten, he said quietly. Then why are you acting like what she did was normal? She grabbed you and ran out the door. She didn't come back for me. Marcus leaned forward. Ray, she was in shock. Dad had just... Don't. My voice cracked. Don't make excuses for her. The firefighter who pulled me out said another 2 minutes, and I wouldn't have made it. She made a choice. People make mistakes when they're panicking, he argued. Leaving your child to die isn't a mistake, it's a crime, I said. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then his eyes flicked up to meet mine. It's her. She wants to meet. Tomorrow night. I don't think I can, I whispered. Ray, he said, his voice gentler now. You've been carrying this for 12 years. Maybe hearing her out. Hearing her out? For what? So she can sleep better at night? I stood up abruptly. I'm not interested in making her feel better about what she did. Tessa reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Ray, hold on. You don't have to decide right now. Actually, I do, I said, pulling my hand away. Because I just saw Uncle Keith's car pull up outside. Marcus paled. You called Uncle Keith? No, but apparently you called him yesterday when I wouldn't answer your calls about Mom. I gathered my things as my father's brother entered the cafe. Keith spotted us immediately, his weathered face grave as he approached. As Dad's older brother and a detective, he'd been the one constant male figure in my life since the fire. Raylan, he said, nodding to me. Marcus. Tessa. She knows, Marcus said quickly. About Mom coming back. And how are you handling that? Keith asked me directly. Before I could answer, Marcus cut in. She won't even consider meeting her. Because she abandoned me, I hissed. Keith pulled up a chair. Ray, listen. There's something you should know. Something I found in the original case files. My stomach dropped. What case files? After the fire, Keith said, eyes steady on mine. There was an investigation. Into what? Marcus asked. Keith's gaze never left my face. Into why your mother left Raylan behind. Keith's revelation hit me like a physical blow. Investigation? What are you talking about? Not here, he muttered, scanning the cafe. My office. 1 hour. As he left, Marcus grabbed my arm. Ray, wait. Don't, I said, jerking away. You've been talking to her for weeks, haven't you? Planning this reunion? His silence was confirmation enough. How could you? I whispered. After what she did? People deserve second chances, he said, not meeting my eyes. Not all people, I replied. Not for all things. An hour later, I sat across from Keith in his cramped office at the police station. The walls were covered with commendations and family photos, including one of my dad in his firefighter uniform. What didn't you tell us? I demanded. Keith pulled out a weathered file. The fire that killed your father wasn't just investigated by the fire department. There were inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? My mouth felt dry. The fire started in 2 separate locations simultaneously. That's not common. You're saying it was arson? My voice rose. The investigation was inconclusive, he said carefully. But you had suspicions. He nodded slowly. Your mother's behavior that night raised questions. My phone rang. Tessa. I answered on speaker. Ray, you need to get to Marcus's apartment, she said, her voice tight with worry. What's happened? Your mother showed up early. They're arguing. It's bad. 20 minutes later, Keith and I burst into Marcus's apartment to find him facing off with our mother, Elaine. Seeing her for the first time in 12 years made my knees weak. She'd aged, her once blonde hair now streaked with gray. But her eyes, cold blue like mine, were unchanged. Raylan, she breathed, taking a step toward me. Don't, I warned. What are you doing here, Keith? She demanded. Making sure the truth comes out, he replied evenly. What truth? Marcus asked, looking confused. An elegant woman I didn't recognize stepped forward from the kitchen. I think I can help with that. Who are you? I asked. Dr. Vivian Chen, she said. I was your mother's therapist after the fire. Ex-therapist, my mother snapped. You have no right. Actually, I do, Vivian countered. When a patient confesses to a crime, doctor-patient confidentiality doesn't apply. What crime? Marcus and I asked simultaneously. Keith looked at Vivian. You contacted my office last week. She nodded. When I heard Elaine was returning to the city, I felt morally obligated. This is ridiculous, my mother scoffed. You can't possibly believe that you started the fire? Keith finished. The evidence points that way, Elaine. Marcus stepped back as if struck. Mom, is that true? Of course not, she cried. Keith has always hated me. He's trying to turn you against me. Then explain why you left Ray behind, Marcus demanded. I panicked. I couldn't find her in the smoke. That's not what you told me, Vivian said quietly. You said, and I quote, I only had time to save one, and Marcus was always easier to love. The room went silent. I felt my world tilt. You chose, I whispered. It wasn't panic. You deliberately chose him over me. Raylan, please, my mother began. Did you start the fire? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. She faltered. Did you kill Dad and try to kill me? I pressed. Your father was going to leave me, she suddenly shouted. He was having an affair with that nurse from his station. He was going to take you both away from me. Marcus stumbled backward until he hit the wall. Oh my God. Keith stepped forward. Elaine Davidson, you're under arrest for the murder of James Davidson and the attempted murder of Raylan Davidson. As Keith read her rights, my mother's eyes never left my face. I came back to make amends, she said. To ask forgiveness. There are some things, I said evenly, that can never be forgiven. I sat across from Detective Sandra Wilcox, a colleague of Keith's who'd been assigned to the reopened case. She had shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner that I appreciated. Walk me through what happened after the arrest, she said, tapping her pen against her notepad. Keith took her into custody, I replied. Marcus had a breakdown. Understandably, Sandra nodded. And Dr. Chen? She handed over her notes. Apparently, my mother had been seeing her secretly for years after moving away. Sandra leaned forward. Raylan, I need to prepare you. Your mother's lawyer is arguing temporary insanity. That's ridiculous, I snapped. She just admitted she did it deliberately. In a non-official setting with no recording, Sandra reminded me. It's your word against hers. The door opened and Marcus entered, looking exhausted. Sorry I'm late. You didn't have to come, I said softly. Yes, I did. He sat beside me. I've been calling everyone Mom has been in contact with since the fire. I think I found someone who can help. Sandra raised an eyebrow. Who? Her roommate from right after she left town. A woman named Patty Gaines. What does she know? I asked. Mom apparently had nightmares. Talked in her sleep. Marcus swallowed hard. Patty said she would wake up screaming about the smell of gasoline and matches. That's circumstantial, Sandra warned. Not when combined with the accelerant evidence from the original fire investigation, said Keith, entering with a file. And the life insurance policy she took out on James 3 weeks before the fire. You never told us about an insurance policy? I said accusingly. Keith looked pained. I wanted absolute proof before I destroyed what was left of your childhood. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. She's requesting to see you. Says she'll confess if you come. I showed it to Sandra. Is this a trap? Possibly, she admitted. But a confession would seal the case. I'm going with you, Marcus insisted. No, I said firmly. I need to do this alone. An hour later, I sat across from my mother in an interview room. A recording device sat between us. You look so much like your father, she said, her eyes drinking me in. Don't talk about him, I warned. You're only here to confess. She smiled sadly. Always so direct. That's why we clashed, you know. Marcus was compliant, but you were just like James, stubborn, righteous. Is that why you left me to die? I never meant for you to die, she said quietly. But you did mean for Dad to die. She was silent for a long moment. He was leaving me? For her, that nurse. So you burned our house down? With us inside? I just wanted to hurt him, she whispered, to make him feel the pain I felt. I didn't think it would spread so fast. But when it did, you grabbed Marcus and left me behind. Her eyes met mine. I had to make a choice. And you chose him. I've regretted it every day since, she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. Your regret means nothing to me. Raylan, please. I'm still your mother. No, I said, standing. You stopped being my mother the moment you closed that door. What do you want from me? She cried, suddenly angry. I've said I'm sorry. I've admitted what I did. What more do you want? Justice, I replied coldly. For Dad, for me. If I confess officially, she said, eyes calculating, will you forgive me? Never, I promised. But I'll watch them lock you away. She lunged across the table, her nails catching my cheek before the door burst open and officers pulled her back. You ungrateful little bitch, she screamed. I should have made sure you burned with him. As they dragged her away, I touched my bleeding cheek, oddly calm. I think we got our confession, said Sandra, entering with a grim smile. 6 months later, I stood outside the courtroom with Marcus, Keith, Tessa, and Vivian. The verdict had just been announced. Guilty on all counts. How are you feeling? Tessa asked, squeezing my hand. Like I'm finally waking up from a nightmare, I said. Though not exactly how I imagined. What did you imagine? Marcus asked, his face drawn. I don't know. Closure? Relief? Instead, I just feel empty. Closure is a myth, said Vivian gently. What you're feeling is the beginning of freedom. Marcus leaned against the wall. I still can't believe she did it. That I defended her. You didn't know, I said, surprising myself by taking his hand. She manipulated you. I should have believed you about her leaving you behind. You were 7, Marcus. She was your mother. She was yours too. I shook my head. Not really. Not in the ways that mattered. Keith approached, expression solemn. The prosecutor wants to know if you'll speak at the sentencing hearing next week. What would I even say? I asked. The truth, Vivian suggested. Your truth. At the sentencing hearing, I stood before the judge, feeling my mother's stare from the defendant's table. Miss Davidson, the judge prompted. You may address the court. I took a deep breath. 12 years ago, my mother made a series of choices. She chose to set fire to our home because my father wanted to leave her. She chose to save only one child when the fire spread. I turned to look directly at her. For 12 years, I've carried the weight of believing I wasn't worth saving. That's a burden no child should bear. But today, I'm making my own choice. I choose to live without the poison of what she did. I choose to rebuild my relationship with my brother, who was as much a victim as I was. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. I don't ask for her forgiveness, and I don't offer mine. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Later, at Keith's house, we gathered for dinner. The sentencing had been harsh. Life without parole. To Dad, Marcus said, raising his glass. To Dad, we echoed. What happens now? Tessa asked me quietly. I finished my degree, I said. Marcus and I sell the property where the house was. We move forward. Together? Marcus asked hopefully. I nodded. Together. Keith cleared his throat. Your father would be proud of you both. How you handled this. How you didn't let it break you. It almost did, I admitted. But it didn't, Vivian pointed out. That's what matters. Standing on Keith's porch with Tessa later, I watched the stars emerge. You know what I realized today? I said. What's that? All these years, I thought I needed answers about why she left me in that fire. But the why never mattered. What mattered was what I did with the life I almost lost. And what are you going to do with it? Tessa asked. I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. Live it, fully, fiercely. She'll probably appeal, Tessa warned. Let her, I said. I'm done giving her power over me. Inside, I could hear Marcus laughing at something Keith said, the sound healing something broken inside me. Marcus joined us on the porch. Room for one more? I moved over, making space between Tessa and me. For a long moment, we stood in comfortable silence. What do you think happens when we finally let go of the past? Marcus asked suddenly. I looked at my brother and saw not the shadow of our mother, but glimpses of our father, of myself. I think, I said slowly, we find out who we really are, beyond the smoke and mirrors. What would you do if someone you trusted with your life betrayed you in the worst possible way? Would you find the strength to seek justice? Or would you let the smoke of the past cloud your future?